Like I don't think I don't think he even saw me. He's way up wherever. But yeah.
That's looking great.
Ooh,
Right, spin that round. Put your bum at the back of the seat, and then you're in good shape. That's the one. Spin it round all the way,
Wow.
So it's sort of kind of sat on your chest. That's the one. And then you want to sort of almost sat on your chest, and you want to talk over the top of it.
Here.
That's it. Perfect.
Wow.
And then you've got a little slot for your arm underneath.
Flip it over, Jack. This is a posh podcast.
We've done this before. Welcome to Characters, a show where, in the dawn of AI, we are trying to better understand the human condition. Season 3 is all about our true colours, stripping away the grey and revealing what haunts, excites us, and drives our purpose. I'm Jack, and as your host, I aim to provide our guests with a safe space, aware of potential judgment, to promote vulnerability, empathy, and humility. On this show, we aren't focused on who our guest is, what they've achieved, or their opinion on society. We've included links in the description for that. We're instead interested in how they overcome anxiety, deal with envy, or embrace forgiveness and gratitude. I really hope you can gain and grow from what our guest has taken a leap and shared for our benefit. What sources of culture do you turn to get a perspective on life concerns?
Oh. What sources of culture? I really like books. And I like books that are, I guess, more centered on the kind of, I don't know the best way of describing it, but like perhaps something like Cormac McCarthy, that's his name. Those kind of like, they're kind of quite visceral. I just read Annie Ernaux's Brokeback Mountain short stories, and they killed me, but they were so good because they just were like raw of life about human beings and the challenges, and that kind of settles me. So when I read those, it's a kind of gives an equilibrium. Is that the right word? The balance about us as a society, as human beings, wherever we are. So that's been my kind of go-to, really, like literature. And that came from an early age because my old man was a bus conductor. But he was educated in East Africa, in Nairobi. And when he came here, he couldn't get a gig, couldn't get a job, in what we term the kind of white-collar industry. So, because of the kind of color bar racism. And but what he did do was he made sure that we, as his kids, had access to literature. And that started off stuff like Great Expectations or bits of Shakespeare, and then film. And he sat us down and said, you should watch this film, it's important. And so it's kind of been steadfast. And then newspapers were really big in our house. So literary education has meant a lot. And things that you're talking about affect me are the ones that are kind of affect real life. And those are the ones that really touch me. And then I do go off and read other stuff, whether it's the autobiography of Malcolm X or whether it's Baldwin's work or even, like sci-fi, Dune, things like that. I would read it. I don't know. They take me on journeys that, in a sense, photography doesn't.
Interesting, because you're a photographer.
Yeah.
So why aren't you a writer?
Why
aren't you a writer?
Writer. Funny enough, I've started writing.
Okay.
So in the book Memoir Temporal, I not sneakily, it's the wrong word. I got Harvard to let me use 3 stories from Rabindranath Tagore, who was a kind of poet laureate of India, over 100 years ago. Nobel Prize poet laureate, whatever you call it. Right. And I got 3 of his pieces, and then I wrote 3 pieces of my experiences growing up in the UK. And so that was my first bit of writing. And they were just on all personal experiences. And the next, I guess, jump into writing now, I'm doing like 10 short stories. for the next book, which is based on archival images I collected when I made it memoir. And I collected around 150 passport-sized studio portraits from the 70s and 80s in India. And I was trying to work out, how do you work with an archive in a way that's not nostalgic? Because, the form itself is nostalgic when you're looking back at old photographs. So what I've done is I've written a kind of auto-fiction, short stories, having a protagonist to start the story, and then using the photographs as kind of, avenues into their personal lives. And they're very short kind of stanzas or short stories based around their experiences. And then, yes, I'm kind of experimenting with it. And it's new. It's a challenge. I'm lucky. I've got a couple of good kind of people I can talk to. There's a artist even, called Teju Cole.
Okay.
And Teju Cole's amazing. He teaches creative writing at Harvard. He's also a photographer, very well published. And so, he's someone I would probably turn to when I've kind of got something better to look at. But it's a challenge. But it's also evolution.
Yeah.
In the form of where I want to be and the work I want to make now.
Yeah, good, because you said better. So you're not there yet. What are you chasing? What
am I chasing? This is going to be making me laugh. Have you ever heard of Matthew McConaughey speak?
Sure.
What are you chasing?
Yeah.
I'm chasing that guy. I think I'm just, if I'm chasing anything, I'm chasing some sort of resolution in the work I make. I've been through the rigmarole really of from being a news photographer evolving into a portrait photographer alongside that, and continuing a kind of documentary art practice. So what I'm trying to do is, with my work, is get the audience to ask questions. I used to, when I first started being a photographer or in photography, I was quite narrow-minded. What's those things that horses have on their ears?
Blinds.
Yeah. So I was a bit like that, and I had this notion that my pictures were going to change the world, and it took me a long time to understand actually what I'm after is the audience to think and ask questions about the work and read what they can read into it and have their own kind of resolution from those images. So that's what I'm after. The audience to ask questions. If I'm doing that, then I think I'm doing my job.
In the name of what?
In the name of what? I don't think it's in the name of anything. I think it's just that I think as human beings, I think we should always question and ask and educate. If that's, I don't want to sound worthy about it, but I would like people, human beings, to think about things, and whatever decisions they come to in their life, that's up to them. But I think for them to ask questions is important. In anything, and not this just happens that I'm working within a visual medium and a written medium now. But whether it's listening to music, or whether it's watching a film, whether it's just having conversations with people, it's about having a moment to think and stop and not jump the gun. I think we I don't want to make a vast kind of statement about a brushstroke of it, but I think it's so easy when you're, I think, younger, to really think you know everything. And I think it takes time to actually sit back, stand and listen a bit more and think a bit more about things. And whatever decision you come to, I think if you give yourself the time to actually think about it and also talk to other people and gain knowledge in whatever way you can, I think then you're on the right path of at least stabilizing your thought process. So if that answer, I don't think that even answers the question, but that's what I'm kind of thinking around now more than anything else.
It sounds like this wonderful idea of taking yourself seriously.
Yeah.
So when did that happen for you? When did you start taking yourself seriously?
When I stopped romanticizing what I was doing. I was chewing at the bit, a dog with a bone when I first started. And it was just about making images that were visually beautiful or visually strong or whatever. But there was a project I worked on, which was in India, based around a society of widows. And when I got there, I was working in a very reportage black and white way. And what I was confounded by was the reasons why these women who had been there most of their life, because some of them had been child widows and then they'd become older. And there was a transient population around 5,000 in a town called Vrindavan. What I couldn't get my head around was the idea that there's something called Shraddha, which is blind faith, and why they were there, the idea of moksha. And yet, being in this particular town, what I visualized and looked around was this kind of business of faith, not blind faith, but business. And it set off a whole set of questions in my head. And why are these people here? And how do I make this visually possible? And what I came to was that I needed to be freer in my process. And so I started experimenting with the idea of narrative and non-linear narratives. And it allowed me that thought process to actually think. And that was the kind of shift from being, because, if you think about the kind of idea around photojournalism at that time, it was very the idea of you were going there as a truth teller or a kind of unbiased kind of way of looking. And the thing is, what I found is that everybody's subjective, and there is strength in subjectivity. That you come from a point that you want to say something, and that was that shift. That I wanted to say something. I wanted to say something my way, what I understood, and the questions that I was asking. That was that shift, and it kind of set off a whole new trajectory about the way I approached work, away from a very particular expectation in the past.
Okay, expectation in the past?
Yeah, going back to this idea that a non-biased way of telling a story. I don't know if I'm being clear about that, but it's just very much around the kind of tradition,
right,
that had been set before me. So if you think about the photographers in the past, I always talk about this thing about being at the altar of people like Sebastian Salgado or Don McCullin or the late Paul Lowe or Larry Burrows, these very traditional photographers in documentary and photojournalism, and that path had almost been there set. This is how you do things. And I didn't know about the vast expanse of visual art and the possibilities within that, because I'd been so enclosed in this kind of space of expectation of what was required of me as a news or a photojournalist. And I was like, how do I, I had to let go of that expectation. I just recently saw Jeff Wall's exhibition at the White Cube, and it was fascinating. He calls it near documentary, and that was interesting for me because it allowed that kind of, when I see that kind of work, it allows that kind of like freedom to make what you want to make. And looking at those pictures, I was asking questions, and it was important for me to have that type of validation about my work.
Oh, wonderful. Just going back to that idea of what you want people to gain, and so what do you want people to understand about you?
There was something you said that was quite interesting, being taken seriously. And I think I want that. I want people to really look at the work. Look at what I'm trying to say. Look at what I'm making. Why am I making these images? Why is it that a photograph or a piece of writing can set you off on a path? And that path, if it can lead you into a space of interpreting the world around us in all of its best and all of its worst, that's what I want. I'm after that. I'm after that, and I'm after, my ego also wants or needs even my wider peers to also, look at me in a way that Cal isn't just that guy who can photograph a portrait of a celebrity and that's it. Maybe 10 years, 15 years ago, I would have been happy with that. And I term it as a 1, 2, 3 portrait. You can send me to make a photograph, let's say, of Ray Fiennes. I can do that. So what? How can I then leap from that to actually make an image that is beyond that, is making somebody really look at it and think about it, and if we were to give a real world example of that, this portrait series I'm working on called A Democratic Portrait, that is a specific response to going against everything I've been taught or what's taught in visual art in terms of photography practice about lighting, allowing kind of expression, etc., etc. If I strip that right back and then you're left with a direct identity photograph, ID photograph, what's that about? What am I trying to say with that? Where's that path leading the audience to arts about? And that's what I'm thinking about really more than anything else. And yes, of course, I think I'd be lying if I said I didn't want validation from the industry, if you want to call it that. I want people to look at it and really say Cal's onto something.
Going back to that idea of wanting them to take it seriously and take you seriously, what might, if they were being mean, what might they say about you?
If they were being mean, it would be, I would guess, superficial. He could take a good photograph, so what? What does it mean? And I think it's indicative, I think, of the idea of being able to craft a good photograph, or craft a good bit of writing, or craft a painting, or whatever, and it ticks the boxes. I think, so what? I think it's just that. I think it's that kind of almost unserious reflection on the work you're making. And I think even for myself, I think I was being mean to myself. That's the whole thing. It's like literally, going off to make a photograph of something doesn't have to be a portrait of a celebrity or an actor or a writer or whatever. It can even be, you can even be to the extreme of conflict photography. I think when I went to Afghanistan, I purposely didn't want to make hero images because I know that I can make hero images, and I don't want to make hero, because that's all that's me being mean is that's just ticking boxes. That's expectation that he can do that, and so what? What does it mean? it's throwaway. If I was being mean, or if somebody else was being mean, it could be that his ego is, it's that Top Gun line. Your ego is writing checks his body count, whatever. It's there. It's nothing. It doesn't mean anything. And I think that's a constant battle with the work I make. Having relevance. I would also, I would come back on that and say also that we're in a space maybe that we weren't in before. The democratization of making images now, whether it's on your phone or whether it's on a point and shoot or whatever, we are so much more visually literate in everything we do. And that if we're talking about an international language, photography or visual is there, right? So we recognize it now, and I want to disrupt that. And by disrupting it, whether it's taking a picture of a piece of rubble, is as democratic as taking a picture of a celebrity. And if I can do that and somebody can go, oh, he's onto something, it's important. There's a photographer called Nigel Shafran who's a genius. He balances this world of fashion and his kind of fine art practice, but his pictures are so visceral, they kill you. And I'm talking about very basic observations of life that are so important, and they hold. And that is the thing, holding that, the picture of a piece of plastic that your fruit has been in, and yet you look at it and it holds. And if that's the thing I'm after, that thing that somebody can hold that and think about it. I'm sorry I'm repeating myself.
No. It just reminds me of the plastic bag scene in American Beauty.
Yes, completely. And I'll interject with that. There's a recent animated film called The Brown Dog, which was made by a friends, James Medina and Nadia Velgram, who are co-directors. And there's a scene where the plastic bag comes back. And I think to myself, wow, that's the thing.
Have a sip.
It's good coffee, man.
Okay, well, so just going back to that question, and what if they were being kind?
If they were being kind, Cow's got something. He's onto something. I think, he thinks. He takes himself seriously. It matters. I'm gone past that thing about awards and pats on the back that don't mean nothing. I think it's more about actual intention. That and it's people that I really respect. I think having that, I have a really good friendship with a photographer called Nadav Kanda, and we're on opposite spectrums very much on what we do. And we both respect each other, and he's vastly more successful than I think I'll ever be. But I think that respect, kindness, if somebody's being kind, respect for what you're doing. Maybe they don't even fully understand what I'm doing, but they respect what I'm doing. I think that's important. Respect would be the kind thing. I think a long time ago I wanted real kind of validation about, oh, he's great, he's making a successful photographer, artist in what he's doing, but I think that goes away. I think it's more about respect and understanding, or even if there isn't any understanding, the thing that people are thinking about, they're having the conversation with you. And you can have a to and fro with them, and you can agree and disagree about stuff, but you're left with this space there's that kindness or understanding, and you don't need to agree, but they understand, but they try to understand. That came about, I think there was in 2014, I'd done a residency in Syracuse, a course called Lightwork. I was working with an artist called Daniel Shea, again, opposites of the spectrum in our work. But Daniel really made me think about my work. I don't think he really liked it that much, but he really took an important kind of conversation about work. And I think I was left with this thought process about, wow, you're in this space whereby you obviously we don't I think our work's very different, but we're allowing that breathing space around us. If that makes sense. That's the thing, I do think that as you get older, you let go of a lot of things as well. And that's what I mean about this thing whereby the validation of the industry is not important anymore. It's more about respect and understanding and having the space to converse. That's, again, audience asking questions and your peers asking questions around stuff and having a to and fro about it and understanding, because you can always walk away. You don't know everything. I think that's the thing. When you're younger, you think you know everything. Like when I talk to my son, I know. And I'm like, well, really, you don't know. But the conversation is the most important thing. Having the conversation with my son about life, and he'll go away and he'll think about it, and then he'll come back and have the conversation about it again. And we may not agree, but he's thought about it. That's the thing.
What would you, if you were to have a conversation with a childhood version of you?
Oh, God.
What would you say?
Breathe a bit more. Think a lot more. It's a really hard one, that, Jack, because the thing is that when you're younger, and you say you have these conversations about younger self, is that when you said that to me, I thought to myself, the first thing that came to mind was, like, would I change anything about myself to say to myself, less ego? That would be the biggest thing, less ego. But would I change anything else? I don't think so, because those life experiences have marked me. The person I am now is the person because of that young guy before set that journey off. I dropped out of a law degree to be a photographer. I wouldn't change that. I wouldn't have that conversation with Cow. No, you're doing the wrong thing. I think that I don't know how valid those conversations can be back to myself, because what's happened has happened, and the timeline, it has allowed for those things to happen for a reason. And I'm a big believer in fate and kismet and serendipity, and I think if I was to have that conversation, it would devoid it. I just think I was too much ego, too cool a kid. Maybe less.
So what barriers did that? Sounds like that's been a barrier. So what?
Barriers, yeah. Listening, not listening. I think having what's that word they use? Having is it retrospect? Is that the word? looking back retrospectively would be that the barriers that were there that came up to me were that I think that I just didn't fully understand, and that understanding, a lack of understanding, came about because I didn't listen, and didn't listen to people around me that I should have done. I should have trusted, and I thought I knew it all, and I think those barriers then came up, and because I had a very sharp trajectory of in inverted commas success. Everything ticked every box along the way. If you can imagine, I left my law degree, I went to night school, I was working retail, I got on a course. My dream, or my goal, I was, okay, do that course, go on to the scholarship at the Independent, win a World Press, get some more awards, and bang, you're off and you're made. Slow down. Listen. Don't jump. Think about where your work is going. Be open to more things. Listen more. Look at stuff more. Be interested. Don't be so narrow-minded because you think you know it all. So those barriers, on the one hand, it opened this whole world to me, right? But it also put up this other thing where I closed myself off to this whole other world. And if I had opened myself up to that world, I think I would have been a better artist, a better photographer, been making more interesting work sooner. And yet, the contradiction is that timeline, that learning curve, needing that learning curve to get to where I needed to get to. Because in the same way that when we talk about barriers, if I'd gone down this other path, it might have put up other barriers. And that's what I mean about this whole thing about stepping back and thinking about things and really digesting it all. You can always have regrets about things, but hell, life's about that. You can think about, should have done that, should have done this, and if I'd done that, this would have not happened. But then if that hadn't happened, something else would not have happened.
Sliding doors.
Yeah. It is what it is. I'm of the glass half full school.
Okay.
So, it's the things that may not have happened at that particular time came because of a reason. I needed time to think about things.
Have you always been glass half full?
Pretty much. I think, it's the cliche is I was the angry young man, but I've always looked at the kind of the better in human beings in life, and that's that thing we were talking about. Glass half being full would be the fact that because of my experiences, understanding how privileged I am. My old man, out of 7 brothers, the only one educated, right? So the rest of them were goldsmiths, diamond setters. That's the tradition of the family. Excuse me. But his parents, my dad's parents, sent him to school, and it allowed this whole other way of life for me to have. Going off on assignment in places that were having real problems or real issues allowed me to see the world, allowed me to see other people. And I think that allowed me to understand that opening a tap at home, having clean water, having a roof over my head, having food on my table, that's the glass half full. Those experiences. And the privileges of those experiences, being able to be alive and do the things I want to do. So I didn't have the privilege is the wrong word. I didn't have the kind of the idea around what am I trying to say? Just the hardest.
I'd help you if you had more.
No.
Context.
It's just the words. I just like. I just didn't have the kind of the benefit of thinking about my glass not being half full.
Right.
I don't know what the word is, but
so optimism was around you when you were younger.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, growing up in East London, it's great. We had our fair share of problems, and whether it was race related or whether it was education related, or whether it was just like survival. But the guys who were my friends, there was a group of 5 or 6 of us, and all of these guys, and they're still friends of mine till today. Some from primary school, they picked me up and said, "Look, we've got to try and do something, and go out in the world and being educated outside the classroom." So that optimism about that yearning to do something was always there. It's possible. Possibilities were, there was something there. So having that, and look, my folks, again, I think this is one of the kind of defining factors, is that despite the hardships, my mum, when she first came here, it's interesting. Like, my dad was kind of semi-traditional, but at the same time not. So, mum going to work in a factory to paint cars, then going to night school to then learn accountancy, then getting to a job in an office, then going finally to Bank of England. Possibilities. Mum did that. Mum made that happen. Dad continued working on the buses, but he made sure he instilled these other things in us. Important things in life, and those possibilities are optimism that things are possible. Work hard, try to live a good life, try to live a good as a human being. People around you, friends, my girlfriend who's now my wife, giving me space to do stuff allows for optimism. I think it's also important. Just I think I'm like everybody. We have our kind of the black dog on us sometimes, but shifting from that. I mean, I think there's also challenges in life that you kind of bring about that allow for optimism. Very recently I met up with like about 14 guys I used to box with. So I went back to boxing when I was 35 to my local gym, like called a Peacock, and I was sparring and training with 16, 18, 20-year-olds. It was nothing to do with photography, but it's this magic space that allowed for life and optimism and friendship and family. And I think when you have those things around you, it's really, really great, having that, which has got nothing to do with art, nothing to do with what it's just to do with life. So you're kind of, you're looking forward to a different thing, and that allows you to then put that into everything else, having optimism about, well, if a 16-year-old is in the ring with you and they're knocking the heck out of you, but they're at the same time you're gasping and they're holding you up, saying, come on, keep going. They're instilling their energy into you. They're lifting you. And I think that's the important thing. So I teach now as well. So, I know students who are maybe struggling, but lifting them, giving them optimism, my optimism in them, that can only but lift and push forward.
It strikes me that earlier you were talking about kindness and peace and wanting to sort of instill that through your work in others and wanting people to see that. But it strikes me that you get a lot of peace when you're not thinking about photography and work, and you're punching somebody in the face or trying to in boxing.
Well, boxing is the most fascinating thing, sport. I don't know if you can call it whatever you want to call it, but I remember, it's interesting, it's a really great metaphor. I always use boxing as a metaphor when I'm talking to people about photography and what you're doing. And the thing is that when you're in that ring, it's you. Actually, for me, it's about you're fighting yourself. So not so much as punching the other person in the face, but trying to be bettering yourself, moving forward, understanding. And I think the peace comes from that, the challenge of yourself as an individual. And I think that's the greatness of it, that discipline that it gives you. But it just allows, it's interesting you wouldn't use the word peace, because that is the most peaceful space to be in, because you're completely focused, because you don't want to get hit. You are moving, you're trying, so your mind is completely focused. And then if I was to then, use that in my photography or whatever I'm doing, that focus, that you are single-minded about where you want to be, so that allows that level of peace within you, And also, the thing when you come back to the whole thing about boxing, when you step out of the ring, and if you ever, when you've heard the commentary or the kind of the cliches, which do ring really true around boxing, like at the end of it you shake hands and you kind of say, okay, well done, or whatever. You've plateaued it. You're there. You have that frequency, if you want to call it that, where you are completely there in your mind. So you are very peaceful about stuff. And I think pushing that into life in general is really good, because it allows clarity. I don't want to make it like all spiritual, but maybe it is spiritual. It's a practice, and I think you have to find your own practice. I think boxing gave me that. I was never, again, another cliche, but I was the last guy to be picked in the football team. I was playing goal or defender. Rugby, I was full back, small, but boxing gave me that absolute space where it was me and only me in that space to train. You're pushing yourself individually, and it does give you absolute meditative peace. The closest that it can come to in what I do outside of that is in the darkroom. When you're in that dark space and you're printing and you have a methodical way of moving around the darkroom. You place your paper at this point here, and your settings here. So as you move, as you work, you're enclosed, but you're completely focused by yourself again, until you step outside, and then you got to go back in again and go back out. And the clarity that kind of quietness gives you, it's amazing. I do remember, actually, it's funny you talk about this, and you've brought this up, but this thing about the psychological state that you are in. When I first built my first darkroom in my mum and dad's cellar, and the magic of that moment of the print coming through very much is the same piece that I still have when I'm in those spaces, that I recognize myself in, So I recognize myself in that boxing ring. I recognize myself in that darkroom. I recognize myself when I'm behind the camera and I'm completely focused on what I'm doing. Even for that 30th of a second or 25th of a second, you're completely there, and your mind is completely there. And it's clarity. It's clarity. And then if you then transfer that same energy to when you're reading a book and you have to reread that line and then reread it again, trying to figure the bloody thing out, and that's that thing. So your mind is very, very much on that point. I tried meditation. kind of works, but it's not boxing. Boxing is a type of meditation.
Curious, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's all about mind rather than
Yeah.
what you're necessarily doing. Yeah.
No, I mean, there's a kind of really interesting about the idea of physicality onto the mind, if that makes sense. There's this thing where people are woodworkers, metal workers, mechanics, or whatever. They have this physicality of what they're doing, and there's a sense of peace in that, I think. That physicality then giving you that mindset, and I think boxing does that for me. And then really reading and trying to understand gives that peace. And that's a very different, I mean, it's not physical, but it's really working the mind.
We're back to literature there. It's fantastic. Have you ever sabotaged your own success?
God, you're asking me for an example. Well, I think I have. Yes, and I continue to. I continue to sabotage it. And what I mean by that is that it goes back to asking questions. Like, I can continue on a path that can be laid out for me quite happily and make good photographs. Make bad, good, bad, whatever. But if I don't challenge myself, then how am I going to get anywhere in what I'm trying to do? So I know that for a fact that, making a photograph that is absolutely not what's not expected, it will probably cost me somewhere, commission-wise. It might even cost me grant-wise. But I've got to that stage whereby, if you want to call it sabotage, is important, because I am bored. Why would I want to continue making what's expected of me? And that expectation may come out as a cost, right? But down the line, I always say to myself that I have this self-belief about the way I want to make work and do stuff. And if it is self-sabotage, then so be it. My brother-in-law said to me, "You got all this work that you can put on your website that you'll probably get commercial work with." I'm not interested. I could probably tick every box, okay, I can do this type of work and it'd be fine, but no, I'm just not interested in that. I'm really interested in the work I'm making and the work I want to make, the things that challenge me. And maybe it's because I get bored very easily and I'm really want to learn. Because I didn't come from an academic background, I didn't do very well at school. I was good at mechanics and I was good at English literature, funny enough. The difficulty has always been trying to pretend to be more academic, and if I try that, then it doesn't work. The sabotage side of it is that not being academic might cost me, because people might go, "Oh, look, he's done this, and this is what it means, and this is what he should have been talking about. This is what I should have been talking about in the work." And I think to myself, but that's not what I was going to do. And if I had done it that way, maybe it would have been I'd been more better at it, or maybe it'd been more successful. But I chose not to. I chose not to do that because I have a very particular vision, an idea that I want to transmit, and that is important to me. More important than the idea of some kind of validation that I've done what's expected. And that is, of course it's self-sabotaging. But then, I don't see the point. I just don't see the point of not being true to yourself. I think I've done that, this idea I've been through where the expectation was there, and look, so what, you do all this stuff. And then you get to a point thinking, what else? The pat on the back's not enough. You've got to feel intuitively inside yourself what it is that you're trying to do, what you're trying to make, what you're trying to say. And if it comes at the cost of an idea of success that's expected or put out by the world and this is how you should be, I don't really want that. I'm just not interested in it anymore. I ticked all the boxes I needed to tick at a certain point, and where did it get me? Time moves along. There's always going to be another Cal down the line there somewhere coming through, and I see lots of great young photographers, and you make space, they can breathe and make the work they're making. I've done that, been there. What's that thing? There's that saying, isn't there? Like, been there, done that, whatever. So, there's nowhere else to go from there. And if I'm going to go forward, I really need to go forward and think about things and make work and talk about work and be interested. And it may just be that those people are playing catch up to where I'm getting to, what I want to talk about, what I want to say. And yes, of course, it's, my career has been in peaks and troughs, and it's probably because of the sabotage being there that I've said to myself, chuck a grenade into that. Was a news photographer. Did it. And, I just got tired of it, got bored. And I'm left empty by it. And so I need to keep on forging new ways, new thought processes, collaborating with people, challenging myself. I've just been to Ukraine. I was in Ukraine in July, August, and that was a collaboration. And it wasn't frontline work, it was along the river, Dnipro. And but the more important thing was I was working with a Ukrainian stylist and creative who was studying here. And the work is a collaborative process, which I wouldn't have done 10 years ago. People have asked me saying, well, why are you doing that? What's not necessitating you to make the work with somebody else and also give that person equal status in the work? Because the ego would say, that's my work. But it doesn't lead anywhere. And I think that's the thing. And I don't know whether people look at that as thinking, oh God, you're sabotaging your own kind of yourself, saying you should be putting yourself out there. But no, for me, the process was actually much more important, and having an equal standing with the person is vastly more interesting, vastly more giving, vastly more kind of important in the way the world is. I am of this notion that if we were less selfish and actually embraced different ways of being able to work with each other, especially what I'm doing, I think to myself that that's important. I think in filmmaking, like I've got a friend who was a great photographer who then became a DOP, and he said to me that, God, photography is such a weird thing because you're always on your own, and the thing is that on a film set you've got all these other elements and it really comes together, and it's just you build this thing together. And I'm trying to think about that in photography, whereby if you're working with a writer, if you're working with a team of people, you're bringing together these kind of amazing talents and thought processes that change the way the work is made, and you learn something. And yes, it may well be that, oh God, that Cal could have been the guy, but really, so what? Actually, you've got something amazing from this scenario, and you've learned something. And you've made something, and that person's given you something really to think about your work.
Because it's about education, it's about giving.
Yeah, very much so. I think you have to let yourself go. I think you have to kind of let go, be open to things. And I do believe that, the more you give out, the more you return. And that's not going about karma. And maybe that's the whole, I'm not practicing, I was brought up as a Hindu, but I'm not practicing. But one of the tenets is this whole idea of letting go of the ego, letting go of the material wants. And kind of that stays with me, regardless of any kind of practice, in terms of religious practice. Like, that's the other thing. Like, there's these tenets that are placed in place around religion, and these things that you're expected to do ritually. But I think to myself, physically doing those things, regardless of that, letting go, actual physical manifestations of what you're doing, actually, that's that thing that you have within you then afterwards, that you find yourself in a better space. Photography is just a bloody tool, bro. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's given me this thing where it's given me a life to go out and meet people, and it's the vehicle. And the more I do it, the more I work with other people, the more about listening and understanding, collaborating. Those are the most important things, because you are learning and you are giving, and you're also being given something back. And those, you come back richer from those things. And I don't want to sound like some kind of spiritual guru around these sorts of things, but I do firmly believe in tenets about how I want to live. I can't bear arrogance. I can't bear this thing where you are you are there and you're given this sort of status. Because at the end of the day, man, we all sleep, we all eat, we all cry, all these things, we're all human, and we all have the same issues within us. And my kind of idea of life, of belief, is that if we have a shared experience, I think we're better off. We understand each other a bit better. It's really hard. I mean, on the way here, I was telling you that, I had this kind of problem on the motorway, and I saw people like screaming, and and I just thought to myself, like, God, it's kind of crazy. The state of the mind. How do you think? My wife said a really funny thing to me recently. We were driving along, and some guy behind me was flashing me, and he pulled up and he asked me, "Put your effing lights on." I'm like going, and in the past I would have really, the anger would have been. I just said, "I'm sorry, what isn't working?" And he said, "Different," and it calmed him down. And Nim said to me afterwards, like, God, that's the person I want to see. Have that. Bring it down. Don't jump. Think. Slow down. Breathe. Don't go into some kind of mad state. And I think I'm trying to live like that now, whereby these shared experiences educate you, and I'm sorry to come back full circle about the idea of thinking, thinking, stopping, breathing, understanding, not jumping the gun, trying to diffuse a situation. You can create really bad energy around things, and I think the worst thing that happens in that situation is that you're the person who carries that. You're the person who's affected by it. Your body reacts to it. Your mind reacts to it, and if you were to just look at it as it's a minute thing in life, it's not life and death. We have got a lot more problems in the world than Cal's ego or something angry or whatever, and I think just to step back, really think about it. We've been going through this extension build at home, and the stress levels have been thinking, and it's always trying to pull back and remember to yourself that, good God, this is nothing. This isn't like in Ukraine, or it's not, wherever, what I mean? It's not that you have to work out whether you're going to get your next meal. And I know that sounds like some kind of worthy thing to say, right? But the reality is the reality. I mean, look, the simple notion of opening a tap and having clean water to drink, that in itself should tell you where we're at, right? That in itself, that you can open the tap and you can drink it, right? You don't have to go dig a well. You don't have to worry about waterborne diseases, all these things that happen in life, right? You know, we have those privileges. So isn't it incumbent upon ourselves to really think about what's important? The contradiction in all of this, and it's down to human nature, Jack, is the fact that our human nature kind of demands this kind of ego. It demands this kind of success. It demands this thing that I need, I want, you know, all of this stuff continues in yourself on these trajectories. And you know, I'm just as guilty of it. You know, how do you rein that in is the thing. How do you balance it? How do you actually use it to its best rather than going down some rabbit hole of like yourself and understanding what's happening around you constantly, you know? Everybody has problems. Everybody has issues. Everybody has, you know, things that they have to deal with in life. And the hardest thing is to try to understand where on that line your issues and problems are in comparison. And it's, you know, it sounds terrible when you say, oh no, at least I don't have that problem to deal with. But if you can use it as actually a positive and rather than a negative thing, oh, I don't have to worry about it because look, I'm much better than this person, right? That's that superiority complex. That in itself is a problem. You know, then you're starting to looking down and saying, well, I'm better than that person. You're not. You still got to eat. You still have a roof over your head. So it's just remembering those things and understanding and using that as a springboard to understanding where, what, how you can live better, but also importantly how you can live better with people around you. You know, and like I said, you know, I'm just as guilty. I have all those same things going on, but I really do try. I try my hardest, and it, you know, yes, it can be self-sabotaging, but it's, you know, I would say, who do you look at yourself in the mirror at night? You know, you have to look at yourself. You have to remember who you are. And if you're looking at that person in the mirror and you don't like what you see, the only person who can change that is you. Kind of live by that tenet in many ways. I kind of like always remember to myself that, you know, if you're looking at yourself, and if you're questioning yourself, it's a good place to be. That sounded very spiritual.
Do you feel, Kalpesh, that you live an ordinary or an extraordinary life?
I live an extraordinary life. I'm very blessed. Look, I'm here, man. Come on. Like, we only met twice. This is our second time, right? Now, in a million years, a kid from East London, you know what I mean? Went to comprehensive school. I'm at, you know, Kubrick's house. I'm talking to his grandson. I've sat in the library. I've been in Afghanistan. I've been in Ukraine. But I've also kind of like done smaller things. I've read good books. So I live an extraordinary life. I'm kind of like blessed in having that. And I've met extraordinary people, like extraordinary people who impact upon you, and who can, you know, who can say my life isn't extraordinary. I've been given a blessing to have these brilliant experiences. Not the richest, but in terms of money. There's a funny line in Alfie, the remake with Jude Law, and he says at the end of it something like, you know, I don't want to be the richest stiff in the cemetery. I'd much rather have this extraordinary life, you know. God, I never expected the kid in East London, in Forest Gate, to be having these things, opportunities, I met an actor the other day, Chiwetel Ejiofor. Got into a conversation. I knew he was born in Forest Gate, and I said to him, "What school did you go to?" He was like, St Andrews. I was like, "Oh my god, I played cricket in that thing." And I was thinking about myself like, so Chiwetel's from Forest Gate, Lennox Lewis, Arnold Schwarzenegger used to kind of live in Forest Gate, and I think to myself like, wow, I'm that kid from East London. I'm kind of like in this world, and that's the ego, like having that extraordinary life about experiences. The ordinary life is, man, I got to get up, make coffee, go to kids, that's normal. The experiences are the extraordinary thing, What a privilege is to be able to kind of be in the world.
That sounds pretty ordinary, though.
What privilege being?
Just being in the world. Would you have been content with ordinary?
Nah, the ego was too big. No, God, I knew I was special. And I think that kind of was instilled in me because I was a middle kid, and I was given this kind of vast amount of freedom, and my ego was stroked. Like he's different. It's cool. So you believe this kind of self-belief gets into you. I don't think I could have been ordinary. I'm not saying being ordinary is a bad thing. There's absolutely peace of mind, and I feel it sometimes when I'm second guessing myself. When I go past the garage and I see the mechanics work and I smell Swarfegger, and I go, God, that would be great. And that's ordinary, isn't it? That's simple. That's just normal. But something burns in me. I want that extraordinary life. I want to be out there doing things that are extraordinary, that people don't have the privilege of, because they're grafting, they're working, they're making a living, they're feeding their kids and trying to do something. And there's beauty in that because it gives peace to them. And my peace is in a different place. I need the thing that is maybe deemed extraordinary. It's extraordinary to me because I think the thing is because I go back to the fact that being the kid from East London, having that thing where, this is going to sound terrible, breaking free of what was expected of me. I think that's the extraordinary thing, breaking free of what was expected of me. Like my kids, right? They've had a much more. They work damn hard, but the opportunities they've been bestowed are extraordinary and ordinary at the same time. But they've had. I never had that. In one sense, I had the extraordinary thing of my parents opening this world to me and opening a kind of whole vastness about possibilities and different aspects that are there within art. I mean, that's been the thing for me, art, culture. I think certainly within the South Asian community, it's the cliche, but the thing is that you're kind of, this idea of stability, getting a good job, being a lawyer or engineer, whatever, those are the expectations, right? But
you binned off the law degree. You binned off the law degree.
Yeah, mate. Corporate law killed me. But it's just, I think, I don't know, bro. It's like, I do think I have had an extraordinary life so far, and I want to continue that. I dream about stuff. I want to do. I'm interested. I don't know, man. It's such a. The contradictions are within me as well. About is the ordinary life the peaceful one? We talk about this kind of spiritual thing about letting go, and is it necessary? I don't know if I can let go of that at the moment anyway. you know, the thing is that, oh, you go and be a monk. That could be quite nice. Be a Buddhist monk. Have one bowl. Don't think about anything else. But then, God, man, I get bored.
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Oh, God.
How was that?
Do you know what? I think that's been brilliant, because the most important thing I've taken away is that, man, it's been about life. It's not been about fucking photography.
Thank you for watching Characters. I hope you were able to gain and grow from our guests' vulnerability. To discover more characters, please subscribe to support the show and allow us to share more of our true colours. Here's the latest episode, or one YouTube has picked for you. Enjoy.